Melissa Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll start by saying what is irresponsible is Labor transferring people on the unemployment benefit into sickness benefit to improve the numbers. At least we are actually not doing that. To actually start off, I think Jacinda Ardern tried to say that physically responsible Labour Party. I think that's an oxymoron to start with. And what is actually wrong with people having 2 to 3 jobs? People wanting to get ahead in life can actually want to actually work. I remember my parents having more than one job to make sure that we had a brighter future than what they had. I remember I myself taking on a second job when I was much younger, and even a third job actually, to try and better my bank balance so that I can actually travel and all that sort of stuff. And I don't see anything wrong with that, and I don't know where Ms. Ardern actually thinks that is a bad thing. Sir, Budget 2011 is about 3 things. 3 things: building faster economic growth based on savings, not spending, based on savings, setting a credible path back to surplus faster and repaying our debts, and rebuilding Christchurch over the next few years. That's basically it. Simple and yet very, very clear. A clear plan to move New Zealand forward. Forward, Mr. Speaker, not backward peddling where previous Labour government left us after 9 years of bad management. What we were left with was a decade of deficits. Labour opposition will actually have you believe that New Zealand will be in a much better position if they had chosen Labour back in 2008. Well, let me tell you, they'll be $45 billion poorer if Labour was, in fact, the government right now. And then to top it all off, sir, we've had unprecedented natural disasters which have rocked the foundation of this country, literally. And the rebuilding of Christchurch is going to take a few years, quite a few years. And yet this national government has delivered a budget to return this country into budget surplus earlier than predicted. A return to surplus in 2014-2015 will mean reducing the need for this government to borrow more and lifting national standards, sir. It was actually appropriate for government to actually run a larger deficit to help protect New Zealanders and support jobs through the recession. But now that the economy is actually returning to more normal times, we need to actually reduce our need for extra borrowing and get the government books back into surplus. That's what this John Key government, this national-led government is actually doing, and I'm very proud of the budget that our Finance Minister, Bill English, has actually delivered. Sir, there are many aspects of this budget that I could highlight that are good for our nation, but to begin with, investing $4 billion in frontline public services, in health, education, and supporting our young people into jobs has to be good news in my books. Labour opposition will make it sound like it's all, to quote one of the opposition members, I think it was last night, I think it was Claire Curran, who actually said gloss with no substance. Well, what is gloss with no substance, sir, is the Labour opposition's thin veneer that they actually care about people who need assistance. If Labour really cared about people, their constituency, then they should really thank the national government, because this government is doing much more than they ever did in their term in government, looking after the people who are vulnerable in New Zealand. Cancer patients under Labour's watch had to wait so long that they ended up going to Australia. Now, under National, cancer patients get attention within a month of diagnosis. Which would you prefer? A national government can deliver less waiting time, no longer the need to go to Australia for the treatment, or would you rather a national government that can actually produce those results? Faster attention, less waiting time, no longer the need to go to Australia for cancer treatment. The 2011 budget improves on what is already a huge improvement in vote health, sir, compared to the previous government's performance or lack thereof. $80 million for widened access to medicines, which means 32,000 patients will benefit from the extra funding in the first year. $68 million for more elective surgery, which is a continuing increase of 4,000 extra surgery or operations a year, which will naturally translate to less waiting time for those surgeries. $18 million for 40 extra medical training places, and this national government promised more doctors, and that's what we're actually going to achieve. More doctors so they can see more patients, less waiting time. Budget 2011 delivers an extra $2.2 billion to public health services over the next 4 years. So another aspect of the budget that I am really pleased with is vote education, which is another big winner. And it is no wonder, because the previous Labour government failed our children. It was actually the Labour government that failed our children, not National, when so many of our children were leaving our schools unable to read or write or do maths. It is a disaster, and that is the legacy the former Labour government actually left this country. This government is delivering an extra $550 million for ECE, focusing to increase participation for Māori and Pacifica and low-income families. $66.5 million to increase the number of trades academies and service academies to keep more of our 16 and 17-year-olds engaged in education and training as part of the wider youth guarantee. So some children, when they go to high school, they're not necessarily academically focused. They don't actually do as well as others who are oriented for the academic careers in their future, and those will actually progress onto universities. But these trades academies are focused for children who actually are interested more in the trades career in the future. And I think this is actually fantastic. One of the stories that I actually heard from one of my colleagues is that, he has actually seen some builders who had come out unable to read and write from school, and he could not even read instructions on their building material when they were actually punching holes and hammering nails. And that is a sad indictment on our education. I think our Minister Anne Tolley has provided leadership by making sure that our children, she has focus on our children to make sure that our children leave our schools with the ability to be able to read, write and do maths, and I commend her. And the vote education's extra money I think reflects that focus that this government actually has. $12 million of new funding with specific focus on lifting Māori achievement, I think, is also a fantastic thing. And $17 million of reprioritised funding to extend the Te Kotahitanga program to an additional 20 schools is also something that I welcome. Because, when as an ethnic person, I think I recognise the fact that there are some of us who actually learn differently. I learned differently when I was in Korea, and when I actually came to New Zealand, I also learned differently. And the way that European culture teaches their children is actually very different to the way that Māori community or the Pacific Island community or the Asian community actually teach their children, because they come from different cultures. And this culturally focused academic method, I think, is something that will do very well for our Māori community and the children who are in fact failing in the current system, and I welcome that. There are so many more specifics that I can brag about, but Sir, this budget focused on the 3 points that I made earlier: reducing debt, getting our books back into surplus, increasing savings to promote faster economic growth, and rebuilding Christchurch. Labour apparently has a plan, and they claim that National doesn't. Borrowing, Labour wants to borrow big and spend even bigger to win votes. But what they have really done to keep New Zealanders voting for them was to actually make sure that they stay poor. Because when they stay poor, with no aspirations to do better for their lives, they will keep on voting Labour. And what this government wants to do is make sure that New Zealanders have the aspirations to do better than what they are. We want them to achieve to their potential. We want them to actually earn better living for themselves and their families. And you know what? 13% of New Zealanders pay 51% of the taxes, and And I think it was Materia Toure who actually said that something was wrong, that those people who actually earn more should be punished almost. 13% of people pay 51% of the tax. We should actually celebrate it and actually congratulate them for their hard work.
Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I say to the member who's just resumed her seat that I would put Labor's